There are things we can do in response. Now, you're probably wondering, if all these programs work, then why has inequality grown? Why have we not solved the problem years ago? And in fact, why are things getting worse now? Well, there are several reasons why, despite the fact that we've identified some effective responses, inequality not only remains with us, but has gotten worse. First, effective responses have emerged, but they are small compared to the wide scope and great depth of the problem. Second of all, programs take time to have their effect. I mentioned the early childhood initiatives, that often their effects aren't revealed until a decade or even 2 decades later. And in addition, when we carry out reforms of our education system or in other areas of social life, they often take 3 to 5 years before they start to work. But our research studies are shorter than that. It'd be rare for a research study to last more than 1 or 2 or 3 years, and so we never even get to the time point where the programs start to be effective. In addition to the challenges of scope and duration, the fact is that each of the programs that I described as effective is something that addresses one piece of the problem. And yet there's a need to address multiple spheres at the same time. We need multiple efforts across multiple spheres. So attacking the problem with one program at a time is probably going to be insufficient. We need to attack it from multiple directions at once. From family to health, to neighborhood, to school, to the workforce, all of these challenges need to be addressed simultaneously if we're to really make progress on reducing inequality. Programs, policies, and practices work differently in different contexts and for different individuals. And yet the research that we support tends to focus on one context at a time, where even if it covers multiple contexts, we usually don't look at whether effects differ in different contexts. Well, we're going to need to start doing that if we're going to identify programs and policies that will really make a difference. Recently, the Spencer Foundation invested $3 million with a research firm called MDRC and several other research firms. And we've joined at a smaller level with the Spencer Foundation, supporting this effort to reanalyze a large number of social policy interventions to try to understand differences in the effects of programs in different contexts. I think this will be an important effort to help us understand how to attack inequality, not as a small program, one challenge at a time, but in a big way across a wide scale. Now, when I bought my first house, I got some advice. There are 3 things that are important when you buy a house: location, location, location. And now that I've had 30 years as a social science researcher, I found that there are 3 things that are important when you carry out a social policy intervention: implementation, implementation, and implementation. Implementation is the whole story. We need more research on implementation. We need to know more about how implementation differs across contexts, and we need to know more about how to implement effectively in different contexts. And only when we have a better understanding of implementation will we make progress on the big problems of inequality. So hopefully I've convinced you of points number 1, 2, and 3, that inequality is excessive, that excessive inequality is harmful, but that all is not lost. Policies can help. Because I think if you agree with points 1, 2, and 3, then surely you will agree with point 4, that we need research to identify policies, programs, and practices that are effective in reducing inequality. I don't know if you agree, but Janet Yellen agrees. Janet Yellen is the chair of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States. And she recently announced that research may be able to provide evidence on which public policies are most helpful in building an economy in which people are poised to get ahead. And conversely, at the same time, it would also be beneficial to understand whether any policies may hold people back or discourage upward mobility. I think she meant that we need to understand those barriers so we can remove them. So, like Chairperson Yellen, we at the William T. Grant Foundation believe that research is needed to identify those approaches that will help reduce inequality on a large scale. High quality research on youth can play a key role here. And we hope to stimulate and support this work. And not just in education, by the way. Most of my examples today have been from education, which is a special interest of mine. And of course, if you're focusing on youth outcomes, then education has to be a big part of the story. But it's not the whole story. And we're interested in a number of other domains. You won't find any domain discussed more widely today than the justice system, with all the challenges of injustice and incarceration and discrimination in the justice system that we're experiencing in the United States. So we think this is a very important area for reducing inequality. I'm meeting in July with the director of the National Institute of Justice to see whether there are areas that we can work together. Also with the president of the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City, an important location for research on this topic, and I hope to stimulate and support more research on this topic. A second domain is child welfare. So the child welfare system helps care for some of our most vulnerable children, children in foster homes, children in care, and a focus on mental health and mental health services is an important part of this. So we hope to support research in this domain as well. Also in the transition to the workforce. So getting education is one thing, but there's still inequality in who gets a job and in what kind of job people get. And so we need to figure out ways of being more successful in that domain as well. Finally, another huge topic in the United States is the situation of immigrants. You may know that we have about 11 million people in the United States who have been living there long term and yet do not have legal status. And so they face grave challenges in trying to get ahead and to create upward mobility for their children. Moreover, even for documented immigrants, there are challenges caused by barriers of language, of culture, and of economic circumstances. So addressing inequality for immigrants in the United States is another key issue and a domain in which we hope to stimulate and support new research. Now, there are probably 1,000 foundations that are interested in reducing inequality. So what's special, what's distinctive about our approach? Well, first of all, we focus on supporting research. That probably cuts out 975 of the 1,000 foundations. But even among those who support research, there are some distinctive features. First, the focus on young people. Our target is young people between the ages of 5 and 25. Second, our aim is to support research that in the long run will lead to action. We recognize, so we aim to support research that helps to build, understand, test, and improve programs, policies, and practices that will reduce inequality. We recognize that no single study is likely to be transformative. But our aim and our hope is that over time, the results of multiple studies will accumulate to guide policy and practice. A third distinctive feature is our aim to support tools that many researchers can use. So I mentioned the study of financial aid as one of our first research studies, but 3 other research studies that we have either supported or will be recommending, and hopefully our Board of Trustees will agree that we're going to support, are of this sort, laying a groundwork for future research. So one is a grant to the National Research Council, where we will be, which is the research arm of the National Academy of Sciences, where we will be one of several funders to support a system for monitoring educational equity all across the United States. A second is a study to a professor at Rutgers University in New Jersey named Bruce Baker, where he will be creating a database of inequality in school finance for every school district in every state in the United States. Now, coming from a system where there's coming from a country where there's a national system of education, this might seem crazy to you. Why would we need to look at inequality in school finance? But in the United States, as you may be aware, school finance is greatly determined by local property taxes. Since some properties are more valuable, since properties in some neighborhoods are more valuable, those districts can generate more revenues to support their education system. So a fundamental component of inequality in the United States is unequal resources to support inequality. But it's very difficult to figure that out, especially if you try to look across states. Right now, there are no common data systems. So we're going to support the creation of a common data system that will lay the groundwork for studying inequality, the effects of inequality, and the success, hopefully success, of efforts to reduce inequality. And the third foundational study will be an effort to create a data system for test scores for every grade in every school district in every state in the United States. Now, this will also be, again, coming from a system where there's one national system of education. This might seem crazy to you, but in the United States, each state runs its own education system, and moreover, there's a lot of local variation within states. Not as much now as there was before No Child Left Behind, but still a lot of variation. So we've never had this kind of system for examining educational outcomes across the whole country, and this new data system will allow us to do that. So this is another key feature of our approach, is to try to develop tools that lots of people can use. And finally, we support interdisciplinary research. Many of the studies that we support bring in different disciplinary perspectives, such as sociology, economics, psychology, political science, social welfare. And certainly if you look across our portfolio, you will see a lot of attention to interdisciplinary research. And we are seeking researchers across the United States to answer this call. So the approach we take, first, we choose our research based on the pressing problems of the time. And so the two problems that we're addressing now, the use of research evidence and reducing inequality, are among the key challenges for our nation. Second, we begin with a set of questions and not preconceptions. Now, this might seem ordinary to you, but actually, if you think about different foundations in the United States, it's unusual. Many foundations start with the answer, like charter schools are the answer, or school choice is the answer. And then they go out and find researchers and give them money to do research on the topic that they've already decided is the solution to the problem. Our approach is different. We don't think we're as smart as the whole research community put together. So we want to say, here's the problem, you have to investigate and convince us that you are pursuing the most important solutions. And finally, we favor an interdisciplinary approach to research. So the argument here is that yes, we face tremendous problems of inequality, but we are not paralyzed. The situation is not hopeless. And if we join together in a research effort, we may be able to identify responses that in the long run will turn that graph I showed, instead of going up, up, and up, down, down, and down. So there'll be more equality and greater social mobility in the United States. Thank you.
Adam, thank you for your great and enlightening talk. Well, you talk about the United States case, but it resonates well in this country. I think we could go through the whole presentation and say, yeah, many people in this room has done a research documenting that inequalities are excessively high in the Czech Republic as well, in both comparative terms with other countries, and especially educational, but also social inequalities, but also in respect it's growing in a time. So we have the same problem. Talking about social policies and its implementation, this is a big issue. So implementation, and and devising the social policies and educational policies, this is a big question for us. And research investigating the effects of such interventions, it doesn't exist, I believe, in our country, and there's not even recognition that we need it. So thank you for your talk, and I believe this resonates with us, and it's opened a lot of questions and remarks. So now it's your turn. Please, before you pose your question, introduce yourself, say your name, and also the institution you come from. And we have 1 hour for discussion, so take advantage of.
And we can take questions in.
More about US case or rising Czech cases.
Yeah.
Learn from.
And we can take it in Czech or in English, right?
Yeah. If Adam make a challenge for me that if someone feels better to pose the question in Czech, I shall translate. Takže kdyby někdo měl problém položit otázku v angličtině, nebojte se česky a já se mám pokusit přeložit, ale když tak je mnoho lepších řečníků a překladatelů, tak mi pomůžete. Takže nebojte se, ptejte se, o toho jsme tady. So don't worry and ask. That's why we are here and why we have Adam here, so take the opportunity and chance. Raise your hand if you want to pose a question.
Before somebody comes up with something better, something more constructive. I'm Martina Krisperová from Institute of Psychology, Academy of Sciences of the Czech Republic. I'm interested in psychology of democracy. And I'm all for research. I do social research and I love it. But as you said, the politicians could care less about the